What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live broadcast of the Engadget podcast. I'm senior editor Devindra Hardawar, and this week I'm joined with our reviews editor Cherlynn Lowe.
Hola.
Hola. And our senior mobile editor Chris Velazco. Hey, Chris.
Hey fam. What's up, squad?
Hey. And our producer Ben is still here too. Chris is off camera. Sorry, I'm just introducing everybody. But hey, Ben.
Yes, hello. You can replace me with Chris now.
It's all good. It's whatever. It's more work for the video team. We are doing, as usual, this is our live recording of the show, so you'll see us making the podcast. We will not be able to chat with you while we're actually talking about our segments, but we will have Q&A bits throughout the show, so just stick around. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Is there anybody you guys want to shout out? Anybody in the chat? We have our usual crew, who I'm sure are here. I just cannot manage the chat and the episode at the same time.
Yeah,
so.
we've got Mark Dell.
Mark Dell, thank you.
Mark Dell's here.
What's good, Mark?
Let's see if there's anybody
Michael
else.
Sanders, hello. Christine Obote. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Oh, we got Josh Sakdeva from yesterday.
Oh, from yesterday. Hi.
You guys are making fans. That's great.
Yeah, that's cool.
We're building a community is how I prefer to think about it.
Yep. Okay, we are going to get into it, and we'll be chatting about a couple of fun things. This is going to be a very gadget-heavy episode, so stay tuned, folks, and stick around.
Hello,
you guys
squad.
good to go?
Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
So I'll take the intro.
Okay,
Yep.
you go for it.
Everyone ready? Ben, ready?
Ready.
Okay. V, I'll intro you only at when we start talking about Samsung.
Sure.
And also, I wanted to make sure. Sorry, we also have to shout out the interviews at the end of the thing, right?
We will.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Engadget podcast. I'm reviews editor Cherlynn Lowe.
I'm senior editor Devindra Hardawar.
And this week we had a heck of a lot of hardware news. In addition to all the usual news that's going on, we had Samsung had an awesome Unpacked event, that's in quotes. Google announced a new smart display. Intel and AMD have a bunch of chip news that Devindra worked really hard to cover for us. So we'll be digging into all of that in addition to some other news updates from all around the world of tech. And also to help unpack some of Samsung's news, we also have special guests, senior mobile editor Chris Velazco here with us. We'll get to that in a little bit. But as always, if you're enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe to us on your podcast catcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes so that people know we're kind of okay. And if you want to interact with us live during the recording of this podcast, we're on the Engadget YouTube channel every Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. So head on over there. Come talk to us. All right, that good for an intro? Oh, should I shout out the interviews now, Ben?
Yeah, let's do like that. We could just say, hey, stay tuned for that.
Okay.
And just throw to me for mine. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Also, as a bonus this week, we have some special interviews at the end of this episode. So make sure you listen all the way. It's kind of like a post-credits bonus. Mine, I have an interview with Robert Kirkman, known best as for his work on The Walking Dead. But
creating The Walking Dead, right?
Creating The Walking Dead, the comic series, in addition to the show on AMC. But he is back with another animated series. This is coming to Amazon. It's called Invincible. I talked to him a little bit about it, what it's like working with Amazon, what it's like adapting his animation for an animated series. So do stay tuned and check it out. Dev, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I talked with Fede Alvarez, a director I really like, and he's behind the new TV series on Apple TV called Calls. And this show, we wrote it up. You could go check out the trailer, but it's really an audio drama with very limited visuals. Like, it is a series of phone calls, and on the screen you can see, bits of dialogue and things like that and visual imagery, but it's really about the audio experience. So I talked with him about what it was like creating this thing that's kind of just a podcast, but you're watching on your TV too. That was a fun chat. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
All right,
yeah,
let's move
dive into Samsung.
Samsung.
All right.
Talk about Samsung.
Samsung.
All right, get hype. Or not. Okay.
Or not. Or not.
Sorry.
Okay.
You have to come in hard with all of the Gen Z lingo,
I have a
please.
full quote here. I have a full quote from
Thank
Charles.
you.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. So if you weren't aware, and I don't like that starting. Let me do it again. All right, everyone. So Samsung had its third virtual event this year, and it's only March. But yesterday, Wednesday, the 13th of March, 17th of March, Samsung had a awesome Unpacked event. That name is the company's, not mine.
I feel like they're really trying to sell it too hard because it's like it's not even the flagship phone. So like we've got some meh phones. Let's call it awesome. Everything is awesome.
I just want to say that if you start labeling something with a word that means it's really, really good, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
It's Samsung.
But,
yeah,
it is Samsung. So the Galaxy Awesome Unpacked event was for it to unveil the A series, or its slightly more affordable line of smartphones. And here to break that all down with us is Chris Velazco, Engadget's senior mobile editor. Hey V, how are you?
Hey fam, what's up, squad? Let's eat this show into the stratosphere.
Oh God. Now the reason
did I get that right?
Are you okay? Are you having an aneurysm, V? Are you all right?
I just had a stroke. Also, was any of that correct? Did I use any of those words correctly?
You had a case of the youngs. Let's put it there.
And so
and as did Samsung,
apparently.
As did Samsung. Basically, for those who didn't tune in to Samsung's event or haven't caught up yet, Samsung's event was just cringeworthy the whole entire time, because Samsung was like, yeah, this event is for everyone. That's kind of like what its invitation said. It was like, oh, Galaxy for everyone. But apparently, according to Samsung's dictionary, everyone means people maybe under the age of 21, and uses lingo that includes a heavy repetition of the word squad, awesome, besties, iconic, clutch. They did not say yeet. I will say they did not say yeet, but it definitely brings to mind that. V, did you feel old watching this?
So that's a loaded question because I constantly feel old anyway. But this really did feel like one of the first times where I officially have transitioned out of the target market of a company, right? And I can live with that. There's no shame in that. I've learned a lot along the way. But yeah, I think you raised a really interesting point, right? Like the A series, which stretches from devices like the A01, which is like $100 phone, all the way up to new devices like the A72 for the equivalent of around $500 to $600 US dollars. They only announced European pricing. This is a smartphone line with such huge reach. So for them to focus on what feels for now like a very, very small slice of the market, especially a market from what we understand that generally seems to gravitate towards high-end devices, whether they're new or not. It all just felt a bit puzzling.
Yeah. I want to just go back to the beginning of Samsung's event, where the first thing I think we were treated to is something called the Awesome Song, and it's a remix of Samsung's All Over the Horizon ringtone. We have a clip prepared for you, dear listener and viewer. Those on the YouTube stream will get to see me and V's live reaction to it. Let's see if we have that ready for you guys. But this song is something.
Okay.
Awesome camera. Awesome camera. Yeah. Awesome screen. Awesome camera. Awesome screen. Awesome screen. Awesome camera.
How much do you think they paid for this song?
I don't know. So for our live stream viewer here on the Engadget Podcast live stream today on Thursday, you'll see that was a live reaction of me and Chris Velazco as we were commenting on the keynote live here yesterday. And yeah, that was my instant reaction to this remix. It sounds a bit Beat Saber-esque. I don't know what you think about that, Dev.
Yeah, sure, kind of. It sounds like somebody who had like a mixer in front of them and just like kept hitting that beat quite a lot. So yeah, no words, no words.
That that should have been our first clue as to what the rest of the event would have been like. But I just was like, oh, okay, all right, we got a beat, and then no,
it sounds kind of like if somebody was tasked with making that remix and their toddler walked in and just like hit the keyboards like. Awesome. It's exactly the kind of music Sophia makes right now, my daughter.
Total. I mean, I would love to hear her tracks. But besides the music, and we'll get into I want to tell you all what the intro to was with this event. But V, did you have any thoughts once you heard this song what the event was going to be like?
I mean, it's always a tricky situation because everyone is always pretty aware of what an event is going to be like going into one of these things. But this was kind of a completely different story. I have to say it. Like, I didn't expect Samsung to lean so heavily into the young sort of vernacular. I didn't expect them to try and just like relate to people under 25 as strongly as they did, which again is cool. We've thrown around the word cringe a bunch already, and I think it definitely was that. But on the flip side, and I really like hate myself for seemingly coming to Samsung's defense, but here's the thing. If they didn't use that cringe ass song, or if they didn't like try to communicate with the viewers the way they did the other day, we wouldn't be talking about this event. Like there's a reason it stuck with us this whole time.
Yeah, because these are not normally phones we devote much time to, right? The A series have been around for a while. They've been budget phones and kind of cool, but I see why they're doing this. It makes sense because teenagers probably would want cheap phones too. Their parents may not want to get them the Galaxy S whatever now, right? If they can get a really nice 3-camera phone for under $500, right?
And
let's put it this way. Okay, so this is Charles Xie, the guy who opened the event, and this is, I guess, Samsung's point of view as to like why they're pandering to this segment. Charles Xie opened saying, the Galaxy A series, we want to put the technology we need at every person's fingertips. Galaxy A, it's no surprise that its biggest fans belong to the next generation of influencers. This is the generation that's harnessed the power of we as in WE, not Nintendo's WII. Witness the global cultural sync and come together with friends from around the world to stan icons.
Did he say stan?
Their own issues and everything in between. He said stan icons.
Oh my God.
He said stand icons.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't want to sound too shocked here. There was also a report, by the way, like I forget if you guys noticed this, but Samsung announced that they're having chip shortages. There may not be a new Note this year. So I also wonder if they're starting to like say like, hey, we got to really push more into the lines we already have rather than debut way too many phones that too many people that, not enough people can buy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like we knew kind of going into this year that the Note was probably not going to happen anyway. And in the report that you mentioned, which I believe was first published by Bloomberg the night before the event, DJ Ko said, hey, we were probably looking at streamlining our smartphones anyway. But because the A72, the A52, the A52 5G were already in the works, they've probably already allotted, as you say, for just like all of the chips, all of the components needed, because everyone is struggling really hard right now. And
they listen to the Engadget podcast. We've talked about Samsung having too many phones. That's exactly what we've been saying over the last year or so. Samsung, listen, that's all.
Yeah, it feels to me like we have to rethink the way we expect certain things out of different parts of the Samsung smartphone population. I'll get to that a little bit later. I want to do this like just the very last thing I'll have to say on Samsung appealing to the youngs, and then we can talk about the phones. But I think some of the so this use of young vernacular happened all throughout. It wasn't just in the intro. Specifically, I think when they were talking about the camera, it was very heavy. But there's a point of contention here for me. And I would love your thoughts on it, V and Devindra, but also our audience. So in addition to using words like squad, which, by the way, they use at least 4 times, if not 5 or 6 times, which caused us...
You had a squad counter.
Yeah, we had a squad counter that they came up with last minute because we didn't think Samsung was going to say the word squad so many times, but we're going to do a live counter anyway. So they said squad so many times. They said the camera was iconic and your pictures will be clutch quality, and you'll get hearts from all your followers. There's like a whole movement to it. But at some point during that that segment too, the person saying all those words about the camera also said that this camera would be great for vlogging. We have a clip of this.
You said vlogging?
Yeah, listen.
Oh.
Let's say you're vlogging with a friend.
Yeah. What is vlogging?
That's not even an old person. That was a younger person in the Samsung event.
People say that sometimes though. Like I've heard people say
This
it.
is not
Maybe
a
not
GIF
like
discussion.
So
You know?
our dear listener and viewer, let us know, what is the answer, the hard definition of how to pronounce that word? Is it vlog or is it vlog?
We know.
We know
don't
it's
even
vlog,
need to
yeah.
do that.
but
Tell us if you have feels about it. But anyway, that's the last
Yeah.
thing I'll say. It's not like they're very in touch.
Yeah.
It's a bit contentious.
This whole event seems like they're doing the "How do you do, fellow kids" meme.
oh
you
yeah,
know,
that came
with
up a lot.
the entire thing. So
Our
hey,
life
hilarious, but
is
also,
fire.
yeah, as we're discussing, probably makes a lot of business sense for them, even if they're not communicating properly to the kids.
Yeah. But anyway, like I said, that would be the last I complain about the whole like young person vernacular for at least this show anyway. V, though, can you tell us a little bit about these new phones?
So yeah, we've got Samsung has sort of an interesting lineup here. And then before we get into the devices themselves, I feel like we really just need to stress the fact that the A series is like a huge business for Samsung.
Yeah.
If you look at least one research firm, Omdia, at the end of last year, sort of went through and just sort of ranked smartphone sales by sales volume. Like the A51 was up there, the Galaxy A01, the A21s, like these are all heavy hitters and they contribute significantly to Samsung's bottom line. So I do think it's kind of nice they finally decided, hey, let's give the meat and potatoes of our smartphone line a proper presentation. But sort of an interesting pack this year. That's mostly because the A52 and the A72 are very, very similar devices. They have very similar screen sizes. One uses a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED screen. The other uses a 6.7. The A72 has a larger battery, obviously, because it's a slightly bigger phone. But beyond that, they use the same Snapdragon 720G. There are some differences in the cameras. All three devices use a 64 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization, and I believe an f1.8 aperture. That's really tying heavily into Samsung's approach of giving people solid cameras at all price points.
This would be a flagship phone like 2 years ago. Like
For
this
sure,
is
for sure.
great. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing that's easy to kind of overlook when you get stuck in the trappings of like the event itself. Like these are legitimately good phones. The A52 5G in itself is particularly interesting to play nice with a sort of sub-6 5G networks you'll find more of around the world than millimeter wave. It uses a Qualcomm Snapdragon 750G chipset, which is a little bit newer, actually a little bit faster than the processors you'll find in the other two A series devices that were announced the other day. You do get a slightly faster screen too. So all of these phones have high refresh rate displays.
Wow.
The A52 and the A72 have 90 hertz screens, but the A52 5G has the full-on 120 hertz, same refresh rate you get out of Samsung's flagship. So for the equivalent of like $400 to $600, depending on the exact device, you're getting a really competitive spec sheet.
Apple has no excuse at this point, by the way, to keep high refresh rate screens out of the iPhone. Like that has to happen this year.
Oh yeah, this is $350
Jeez.
euro anyway phone, and it has a 90 hertz screen to start with. I will say though, the branding remains confusing to me, right? Like I would think of the A72 as a high end one, but it sounds like the A52 5G is the more premium within this lineup. Is that correct, V?
I mean, that's certainly one way of looking at it, and that's how I've just sort of naturally looked at it. Like every company sort of has their own weird naming scheme, and Samsung's has been generally pretty straightforward. Like the higher the number, the better it is. But 5G has kind of thrown a wrench into the mix because, you know, a 5G device, even though it sort of belongs to a theoretically lesser tier within that model structure, like just because a lot of developing markets don't have 5G and don't have to worry about it, these things will generally be sold in like Korea, Europe, probably. We might get one of these things in the US. So in those markets where the situation tends to be a bit more developed, it's not a huge surprise to see them investing in a few more premium features, but it does kind of feel a bit lopsided here.
One of the things that surprised me was that they also named Space Zoom as one of the features on this. You get 30 times on these devices with up to 3 times optical zoom, I believe. And with the S series having had that as their kind of the standout feature for the last I don't know, 2 years now. For it to trickle down, I guess that quickly to the A series is just fascinating for me because like, wow, there's almost no reason for most people who are on some sort of budget to pay for that S series now, especially with the going away we're hearing of the Note series. It seems like the S series is quickly taking over as the phone for the specs obsessed, right? The S series may soon take over the Note series spiritually, especially if S Pen support.
Yeah.
Well, S Pen support is already here for the S series, and then the Notes, the folds maybe will have them. Are we supposed to think of the A series as an upcoming successor to the S series and the S as new Notes?
I'm surprised they didn't just change the name. Like this should be called the Galaxy Squad, to be honest. Like the Galaxy Squad lineup.
No.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you were going to say that.
Yeet.
I hated
we
that.
need a Devindra speaks the young.
Sorry.
He said squat and yeet. We did this, people. We did it. What else?
Broke his
what
brain.
else can we get Devindra to say? Let's see. But the Galaxy Squad, S being the first letter, so maybe the next is the Q series, and then there's a U series for the underperformers. I don't know.
They gotta like all these companies just gotta change up their names. Like we don't have to stick with the A series. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you if it's Galaxy Squad 1, Galaxy Squad 2, or something like. Anyway. They could totally do that. But I think we're really getting at the heart of this, right? Like I like cheap phones. And I like good tech getting to cheaper phones, and that's really the key here, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no contesting the fact that all companies are now paying way more attention to the mid-range line than they used to. Apple, I mean, I hate to like drag Apple into this, but they released the iPhone SE around this time last year, and it gave you like an A13 and pretty solid performance out of a device that looks like it's 4 or 5 years old. So like that's maybe not great.
And they also had to kill the 12 mini, right? Or basically wind that down because people didn't really want the slightly smaller premium phone too. So it's like people want the budget phone, but not the cheaper, smaller premium.
Little baby.
A lot of things to learn here.
Yeah, I do feel bad for all of the people who've been like clamoring for a premium small phone because like it's such a vocal minority. People really care about this stuff, and it felt like they got what they wanted, and
it's a Twilight Zone episode.
Back.
You got what you wanted, but what you wanted has less battery life, and that is the consequence of your wishes.
What you wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
An entire slice of the industry is like stuck in a library at the end of the world, but their glasses broke.
It's too small.
But I like the idea that the mid-range or the more affordable lineup is getting a bit more attention, and it looks like soon we might be, giving the high-end flagships that are $1,000 phones at this point, giving them the space of the Notes, the even more high-end. I think if we start thinking of them as like more luxury and maybe normalize, I guess, the ownership of a mid-range phone, maybe it'll give these companies a bit more pressure to bring these better features down faster.
We
even cover phones.
Crazy. Yeah,
I know.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Do you think that's where we're headed? Like where we're going to start treating the $500 range as the mainstream range?
I mean, look, I certainly hope that's where we wind up. We're all fans of cheap, good phones, and I think we all agree that more people should be buying them. But there's a level of like cultural weight and cachet that comes with having a phone that everyone knows is $1,000, and that's not something that Samsung or Apple or whatever is going to be able to sort of beat out of us by changing their branding around. It's just a nature of consumerism, and we all have to spend a lot of time just sort of steeped in it, and it's not great. Like I do firmly believe that most people would be better off buying like a $600 phone, saving the $400, and just sort of like having a little bit of buffer in their lives. But these companies have a vested interest in selling us the biggest, most profit margin laden devices possible, and those are the ones that cost $1,000 plus.
Yeah, it's all Apple's fault, by the way. Like Apple is a genius at pushing prices higher, and they pushed past $1,000, and we were all like, "This is not great." And Samsung was like, "Oh, $1,000, try a $2,000.
Let me see you." And yeah, exactly.
$400 phone. Things went crazy, but I do hope we kind of normalize because hey, we're not walking around and showing everybody our phones, right? The cultural cachet of walking around saying, "I have the iPhone 12 Pro" doesn't exist unless you're creating content for TikTok or something, right? So. Yeah.
Which is the generation that the Samsung's awesome Unpacked event was targeting, but for some reason they're like, here's this 350 euro phone that we think is going to be good for the yeets or something. And I don't even know how to use that
We could
word.
just create our
I
own
think
words. I bet we can make something happen.
Yeet your vegetables. That's what I'm going
Eat
to
your
say.
vegetables.
I think people do eat their vegetables.
Oh no. I hope that wasn't obscene.
I don't know.
Anyway, I've been using the Pixel 4a for almost a year now. It's a $350 phone. It doesn't have the fastest processor. It doesn't have these quad camera setups, but it's gotten the job done. It's again, caveat being it's been a pandemic year. I've not been going out a lot, so battery life is dramatically less important to me. But still, like, it turns out I can live with a $350 phone. Maybe we all can, but
maybe we all can.
it's philosophically
Really something to think about. Yeah.
something to chew on, y'all. Something to yeet on. Oh, I can't. I hate myself.
Yeet on that.
Oh, yeet on that. Okay. Let's move on from yeet to there was a point in Samsung's event where they used the word accessible, and just based on what I've been covering for the last few months or so, that got my attention. And I was like, oh, do they have some new cool features? But Samsung was referring to accessibility in terms of price. These phones, the good thing about them is that like they're offering a very compelling set of features at a more affordable, therefore more accessible price, which I'm interested in. But I would like to point out, and V, I don't know if you realized this maybe after the fact, but there was no ASL interpreter this time. Whereas for the last two keynotes that Samsung had, they had an ASL interpreter, and that was like noted on Twitter, at least I saw. But this time around, none.
Yeah,
And
I did notice that.
yeah, do they think maybe younger people don't need a sign language interpreter?
I think it's fair to say a lot of what happened yesterday was not fully thought through.
Yeah.
So it's maybe not a surprise that they left.
They
that
used
part
their
out.
entire budget on the Young Speak. You know, you got to license Yeet. You got to like
That
pay
song
TikTok
cost so much money, by the way.
Oh no. They paid so much for the awesome remix song that they
Like,
could not afford an
know.
ASL. Awesome sign language interpreter.
Speaking of like the market they're aiming for with this, I really wonder why was this a big like live streamed event? You know, like it seems like if you're trying to go after this market, maybe go after where they are. So I guess, yeah, we're talking about it because it's a big thing. We have to devote time to it. But I can also imagine like Samsung beating TikTok with some really creative videos showing off these new cameras and what they do and letting that kind of spread and, you know, kind of having shorter bits, not like a big professional event, but having shorter ways to convey what these phones are and what they're doing. I don't know. It seems like there are ways to rethink this, but these companies, they're not thinking creatively, right? They want to copy what's trending now, and that is Yeet and Young Speak, I guess.
To be fair, a few of these clips did wind up on Samsung's TikTok after
Good.
the event. So like maybe they designed this around having some sort of more social forward content to be able to pull from. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. In general, it was not amazing.
To repeat a word that I overuse, I want to shout out our live chat viewers or live chat participants from yesterday's live stream, where Daniel Cockane and Mark Dell are some of our regular viewers, envisioned the planning meeting that might have happened that led to yesterday's event, which is potentially people at Samsung HQ had a take your kids to work day, and they're like, you know, this phone is cool vibes, fam. Let's vibe check this a sec. Y'all should squat it up, fam. Tight. Bet. And then they were just like, yeah, that's a great idea. We need to follow what the young people say. And then I think someone else in the chat yesterday, Maori QHD, I believe was their username, said, imagine the popcorn eating party right now. Going over at Apple Park. What do you think Apple is going to come back with?
Apple does
this
not
be?
like. I bet you nobody at Apple had any idea this event was happening. They didn't care. Like, it is so beneath Apple. Maybe somebody like was like they saw on Twitter while they were in the bathroom. Samsung has new stuff. That's cool. Back to, you know, our AR glasses and our Apple car and all the cool stuff that's going to change the world.
And for some reason, the target audience for Samsung's event, they just use Apple anyway, no matter
Yeah.
how hard. Maybe that's why they had to target that. Anyway, but V,
Yeah.
you're our Apple person, at least on the mobile beat. What do you think Apple like feels about this, or is like anyway?
At least going off of the conversations I tend to have with them about this stuff, like the official party line would be something like, we don't give a damn. And I'm sure that's true to some extent. But Apple is, in fairness, one of those companies you just see kind of seemingly throwing their weight around for no reason. Like, if maybe fine, no one knew that Unpacked was happening and no one or Apple was paying attention. There have been instances in the past, like not too long ago, they scheduled their event for like the same day as a OnePlus event.
Yeah.
And I refuse to believe that like no one looked up anything about that day. And the obvious conclusion is they just decided, you know what, screw those guys. Like, let's just do it. Let's just do our thing. So there's I do believe that Apple sort of looks at the industry and sort of gets a feel for where it's going, but it does sometimes treat everyone else with like total contempt.
Speaking of OnePlus, they have an event coming up and we're expecting another phone from them. But to be clear, OnePlus made it smart for doing exactly what Samsung is trying to do now, which is squeeze a lot of good features for a fraction of flagship prices. Do you think, I know they've uptrended a little bit in terms of price lately, but do we think OnePlus's next phone is going to be better than the A50 or 72? And should we be holding out for a OnePlus instead of buying an A something?
It's tough to say. Yeah. So going into this event, I'm fairly sure what we're looking at are two sort of high-end devices. So something like the OnePlus 9 Pro and then the slightly down market OnePlus 9. And there might be some overlap between a OnePlus 9, the sort of dialed down version of that true flagship device that now carries the true flagship price. There might be some overlap between that and something like the A72, but I expect that to be pretty minimal. If anything, it seems like the OnePlus Nord line is kind of where OnePlus is really gunning for the kind of market that the A series has been going after. So no, if you're like looking for a cheap phone, you probably don't need to wait for OnePlus to announce whatever it has to get a feel for what's going on. But on the flip side, yes, also everyone should wait and buy a new phone as late as humanly possible because of deals, because of launch windows affecting other companies and them introducing deals. Like, it's a weird interconnected economic ecosystem that we're sort of watching unfold every time something comes out. So the best advice, as always, is to just hang in there for as long as you can.
Just hang in there until you really need it. You know, don't do an upgrade just because you feel like it.
Don't be like me and buy a foldable phone just because you like bought into the hype really hard one day. It's fine. I don't regret it. But
the other thing though, Samsung's cameras are good, typically good. OnePlus's cameras are not. Kind of a simple thing. Yeah.
Well, that could change. And you raise a great point.
We've been saying that for years. That could change.
This time around, though, there's something different. V, you want to explain?
Yeah.
Sure. So among other things, OnePlus is committed to spending $150 million over the next 3 years to improve its camera technology. And part of that push is a partnership with Hasselblad, the sort of famed, I believe they're Swedish. There's some sort of Nordic, sort of classic camera maker. They made the cameras that went with Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong to the moon. First, sort of like a really storied brand. So they've linked up for a partnership, and it sounds great because Hasselblad is very much like Leica and Huawei. It's one of those names that sort of gives you instant credibility. But if you look at sort of the messaging that they released around the time of that announcement, it very much sounded like the focus, at least for these devices, is like, hey, cool, we're going to have better, more accurate color science. So your colors look more natural, which is great, but also maybe not the most exciting thing in the world. Like every company has their own approach to color science for their smartphone photos. Samsung has gotten, especially, I have to say, like they were really, the Samsung look is a thing, but with the S21 Ultra, that thing took amazing photos. So if that's the bar we're now kind of looking at on the Android side, I honestly really wonder if any kind of partnership like this is going to do OnePlus any good. And it is also worth noting, Hasselblad has had experience with mobile partnerships before.
Yep.
They made that whack-ass Moto mod for the Moto Zs
Motobot!
that replaced the phone's camera with another camera that was the same resolution, just that had a physical zoom. So cool. It was a really interesting idea. But of course, literally no one bought the thing.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what OnePlus announces. That'll be next week on Tuesday. For those of you who are so inclined and like to check out YouTube, come back on the 23rd, I believe at 9:40 a.m. Eastern, where V and I will once again be watching it live with you. Bring your popcorn, bring your yeets, and your squad.
Bring your squad.
Are there any final thoughts on Samsung before we move on to the next topic, V? Do you have any thoughts to share with our audience on the A52 and A72?
I don't know. I think we've really kind of nicely tied everything up. I do want to just say though that like I am really, really curious to see how this new sort of series of mid-range phones just compares to last year. As we mentioned earlier, some of the A series devices Samsung released in 2020 were its biggest sellers. But, you know, with everything going on, with increased pressure from other companies and with the potential for significant sort of slowdowns because of chip shortages, Samsung is just not in a strong position as it could be last year, which is wild because Samsung was in the middle of a pandemic last year. So I am looking forward to just like sitting back with this with great interest, and we'll report back with anything else we find.
We're going to talk now about another piece of hardware that was introduced this week. And this to me was super fascinating when I first heard about it. This is Google's Nest Hub second generation. And it's a smart display, pretty par for the course, except it can track your sleep by
It's a bit of a pervert, this smart
by
hub.
using radar. So the idea is you set up this 7-inch display somewhere near your bed, within a couple feet of your bed. You angle it to face where you're sleeping, and you calibrate it. You do a setup process, and you lay in the middle of where you would usually sleep. You know, if you tend to roll around, just kind of like lay in the middle of where you tend to roll around. And the thing will use radar to detect motion, so your movements in bed, to see if you're asleep or not, and then track it and do the things that a sleep tracker would do. So, how long have you been in sleep? How much were you restless? It also has other sensors on board, like a third microphone as opposed to just 2 in the generation before, and temperature sensor, ambient light sensor. It uses all these things to detect things like whether you coughed, you snored, how cold it was in your room, how bright it was in your bedroom, and then tell you the next day, like, hey, you were restless these times, and this was the temperature, light amount, and sounds in the environment. It uses the solely radar chip that showed up in the Pixel 4. It's also in the Nest thermostat, the newest Nest thermostat. So it's not a camera. It's not like watching you sleep. So for those who are concerned about privacy in the bedroom, there's not a camera here.
This promo video does not look great, to be honest. It is like this little thing just buzzing rays out of your nightstand and staring at you. It's not a camera, but it does feel a little creepy as hell. I'd say, like, where can also they take this? Like, I can imagine your bedroom activities after a certain point. Google's going to start giving you ratings and judgments on that too. Like, stay out of my bedroom, Google, please.
That was my first question for this, right? And that was a fun conversation to have with Google, by the way, where I could not say the word sex or
I mean, you could. We're adults.
Yeah. I could, but I was trying to be professional, y'all, and I was trying to be like, how about other activities in the bed? Other movements in the bed, like jumping about. Some people wrestle in their bed, But yeah, so basically what the sensor or the smart display is getting is what looks like it's a spectrograph, and it's lines that jump up and down, and it looks more like an ECG that's very active or something. I don't even really know how to describe it better than that. But so it's not seeing images. And what the algorithm does is when it's looking at this spectrograph, it applies that algorithm to be like, okay, this pattern of activity is flipping around and tossing and turning in bed. Whereas this activity that looks a little more rigorous Could be something else, and we're just gonna ignore that. We're just gonna
Are they? Are we gonna trust Google to ignore that?
Well, that's what the algorithm is supposed to do. I don't know. We can get into like whether or not we trust Google. But the other thing, speaking about trust, by the way, so this information, where it's interpreted into sleep data, that is processed on device. It doesn't get sent anywhere for processing. It's only after your data has been identified as sleep, restlessness, coughing, etc. And that's what's finally then parsed or passed on to Google Fit, the app with which you can look at your data on your smartphone. So
but that still goes to a cloud before it gets to the app, right? Like there's still a cloud hit, or does it go straight from the device to your phone or something?
The cloud hit, but what the cloud gets though is like, for example, it detects that you've been coughing or snoring, right?
Sure.
What the cloud gets is the fact that you've been coughing and snoring, and not the sounds of you coughing and snoring.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Not the raw data, but the interpreted data. So slightly better, but you know, no raw data, no sounds of whatever sounds you make at night.
It is kind of interesting because we've seen a lot of sleep tech, and I don't think anybody's used radar in this way before. And I've tried a lot of cool things. Like I remember the Jawbone Up band, my beloved Jawbone Up, did a really good job of sleep tracking. You know, we've had sleep tracking wrist devices for so long. There are a lot of things that can fit into your bed to kind of help track your sleep. But this seems like the most inobtrusive way of doing that. It's just the idea of a little Google radar pinging me while I sleep just feels that is kind of dystopian in many ways. But man, maybe this will work out and be good.
I have thoughts on this, but V, what are your thoughts on this?
I am full of questions, and the one I guess I want to throw out there first is how effective do you think this is? Like, how close does it have to be? Obviously, in this like little animation, the person it's tracking is like wearing covers. Like, do we expect that to be an issue, especially in winter when you're just kind of bundled up? Like, what's your sense of how well this could actually work?
I don't know. I don't think that they I mean, I haven't tested it out, and I will be testing it out, so I'll report back when I do. But I have the same skepticism you do, right? Heavy covers. The product manager during my briefing said that the system is sensitive enough to detect micrometer movement of your chest for detecting your breathing, and it has to be within a couple feet and angled towards you. So I think calibration is going to be part of whether or not you get an accurate reading. I will say this, I have been super frustrated with some of my Google smart home devices recently. My Chromecast just keeps dropping in and out of Wi-Fi. My Nest Audio just keeps dropping in and out. It pisses me the F off.
Imagine that.
So I don't know. I get so mad. So I don't know how well this is going to work. I will say though, like, to Devindra's point, I love the fact that they've done this because it's just very unique application of technology they've just had. They are figuring out what to do with Soli. They're like, Soli is ready now for the mainstream, but we don't really know how to use Soli. It didn't work in the Pixel 4.
I have the Google Nest with Soli, and like when I walk by, the thing will like pop up and tell me the time or something. Or if I walk by, it'll like kick up the heat because nobody's been moving in that room for a while. So it's been good for things like that, more so than phones, I'd say. Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, it was never great on like when Google first started developing Soli, like their big push was exactly what they seem to be talking about now. Those very sort of like micro level gestures. One of their earliest demos was like you could like use your fingers to like control volume at a very granular level. And that sounded great. And it sounds like we're finally maybe getting a use for that very fine grained ability to monitor motion. But I don't know. I feel like if anyone has experience with Soli, it's probably due to something like using a Pixel 4, which did not do very well. And that's what really concerns me. Like the Soli array in the Pixel 4 was meant for like very big noticeable gestures. You were using your hand, you were swiping left and right to change tracks. And even then it wasn't particularly good at it. So if you're telling me that Google has built up a thing that's supposed to sit a couple feet away from you that can tell the difference between your rise and fall of your chest and like your
the rise and fall of other things,
or the rise and fall of other things, or like
animals
the electric
in your
fan
bed
moving your shirt around. Like
everybody sleeps with pets. Like that's the other thing too. Like I have cats always crawling over me all night. You know, cats and dogs. Oh my.
Oh, I'm kind of jealous.
That's one of the things that they even brought up themselves, where they know that like, you know, your pet can jump in your bed in the middle of the night. And that sort of detection is they performed they said they performed like 110,000 nights of tests, and on about 10,000 individuals to see how accurate their system was. And they said that compared to the gold standard, which is polysomnographic studies, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They said that was the gold standard, and they said there was no statistical difference between their results and those. And then compared to the sleep trackers already out there, whether it's wrist-worn, a wearable, or a mattress sensor, they found that theirs were either comparable or at times even better. And again, we'll have to see this for ourselves. I think there's a difference between a controlled study and out in the real world. But the idea is that the algorithm has been trained to be smart enough to distinguish between when your cat is crawling across your bed, skulking, whatever, across your bed, versus
running,
when you're just flipping around or like reaching for your phone. And if you're reaching for your phone, the algorithm should be like, you're awake. What are you doing up, bro? Turn off Twitter, go to bed. You know, like, well, it won't say that, but you know what I mean.
I think there's something to be said about like the quality of that training too. So you said they tested this stuff for like 110,000
nights.
With how many people?
10,000 individuals.
I wonder how many of those 10,000 people had sex in front of this thing, or just like abstained because they knew radar, like the training.
Yeah.
You get what I'm going.
They needed to not only have sex. Let's be honest. They needed to exclude, right? That
they had to find that data,
identify, and then exclude. Which you are totally right. Did any engineer figure out what the algorithmic pattern of sex?
There's a lot of jumping up and down in this this graph.
Yeah,
this graph is just going
like
up and down, up and down. I don't know what's up going on here.
This is a happy Thursday morning.
This is what happens when I come and crash the show.
Crash the show. Here's the other thing. If you like regularly sleep alone, but occasionally you have a visitor stay over, I asked what would happen and would that affect your result? And the answer was that, well, maybe, but if it does, you can exclude that night. And the idea here on Google's end is that they don't want you to get hung up on one night of sleep data. They want you to focus on your general sleep patterns and do things that can help you sleep better,
Sure.
Things that are within your control. Like,
so what you're saying is there's going to be a
temperature.
one-night stand button, basically, at some point.
Nice.
I wish I was at this
however many
briefing.
nights
I
your
wish I was at
stand
this
is.
briefing. I would just Google has to answer the hard questions. Okay, so yeah.
I asked them in euphemistic ways, so don't worry. I had a lot of fun, not only in this interview where I was coming up with different ways to say these things that I didn't want to be too explicit about for some reason, and also writing the posts, being like, how about when you have a stayover? Sure.
I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. This device. Sure.
I actually, you've given me an idea, V. I do need to test this thing out in a variety of situations. So we'll see how effective that stuff all is. So yeah, it's a very good question you pose. But yeah, this is coming,
welcome.
y'all. I don't know. So you guys have, well, okay. So in addition to the sleep sensing, other stuff about the Nest Hub that's new from its predecessor. I mean, it's the same size screen. It's not just like a glorified digital photo album anymore, right? Because it can do sleep tracking. But now it's got a third microphone, like I said before. It's got an on-device machine learning chip, so Assistant should be faster to respond to your queries. It's also got the new audio system that is now in the Nest Audio versus the kind of underwhelming system they had before. So better audio. The Nest Audio, honestly, for the size and the price, had really good audio quality. So that's really nice to have in this Nest Hub as well. So still some improvements here. Also, remember Peachoip, Dev?
Yep.
From a few episodes ago, Peachoip, as in
last
Project
year,
Connected.
Yeah.
Project Connected Home over IP, or what we decided to say, Peachoip. There's support in the new Nest Hub for Thread, which is what powers or enables the Peachoip system that people are hoping will become a smart home platform that works in the future. So lots to learn about the new Nest Hub, and I can't wait to get it into test. Would love to hear all y'all's thoughts. So send them our way, podcast@engadget.com.
Okay.
I think that was a good enough.
That was
No,
good.
End to the segment?
Yes, that
Yeah.
was a great end to the segment. So goodness, do we have? Let me actually make a
Questions?
Note of, yeah, but let me
Questions.
make a note of where this segment ended.
Okay. All right, thanks for hanging in there. All y'all who are watching the YouTube, we're sorry. It's a little unclear, I guess, from the title that we're actually just recording a podcast and we can't talk to you until the breaks. But here's a break.
Yeah, so here's a break. We're talking to the chat, so light up the chat with anything you want to talk about. I was logging so many comments, so we're gonna get through a bunch of them pretty fast, and then I think were a couple of questions that I think are worth talking about a little bit more.
Okay.
So Julius says, like right around when we were listening to the awesome song, "Geez, this is terrible." Lol, who approved this?
Nice.
A Jonathan Anderson said, "My 14-year-old son watched the awesome Unpacked event and was like, why are they trying to use these words? Looks like a cool phone, though."
Oh, okay.
They're into the phone. Okay.
Kylo Tech says, kind of before we got into actually talking about the phones and we were just mostly roasting the stage show, do they not know that the A51 was the best-selling Android phone of 2019? Then we got to that. Yeah, V talked about that. Like, it is a highly popular bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fat Produce said that one of the YouTubers they watch, a guy named JV Tech T, says vlogging.
Oh, it's Josh. Yeah,
Josh,
okay.
Vergara says vlogging. Really?
No, he's trolling us. He's got to be trolling us.
He has to be trolling. I'm gonna have to go have a conversation.
Wait
with
a
Josh.
second. Maybe he does. I feel like I might have heard Josh say vlogging.
I'm gonna go talk to JV Tech T. We're friends. I'll correct.
So, yeah,
get that group chat.
We have to be clear about language here. I don't want another GIF situation because that was very dumb when people started saying GIF.
Whether or not
GIF. We didn't start saying GIF. GIF was always the way. Y'all started saying GIF.
No, GIF is always
the way. GIF was always the way. Sorry.
It's okay.
So then at one point someone was talking about like the chipsets on these phones. We were talking about the Exynos a little bit, and someone said something about a Snapdragon, which I'm pretty sure was a typo, but it's also like purposely implied. It's like, oh wow, fam, like Samsung totally snapped with this new A series. Wow, like,
we're not going to go back to Oh Snap. That was 90s.
Well, no. It's not Oh Snap. Like they snapped, they popped off. Like
Snap that drag.
Well, yes, it like that is. I think that's kind of more like Zennial sort of thing. So like the people on the cusp between Gen Z and Millennial. But then again, let's remember, all of these generations are so made up.
It's all made up. Although I think I was watching the Billie Eilish documentary, which is fantastic, and you should all watch it. It's on Apple TV Plus. But listening to her speak and with her and her friends, it's like they are basically redoing 90s street lingo. Like that's what it feels like. We're coming back around in a weird way. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, everything comes back full circle. Yeah.
So we've got a bunch more comments. One really relevant one that I think could be answered pretty quickly, because again, like the longer conversations are still coming up. What 5G bands are included in the A series this time? This is from Jas Shechdeva. Excuse me.
I don't know off the top of my head, but let me see if I have that just in my email somewhere.
Okay, I'm gonna run to the bathroom while you guys clear this out. Have fun. Be right back.
Okay.
So,
but continue with
Mark says this is frequent commenter Mark Dell. This is mostly a question for Cherlynn and V anyway. Were the Engadget squad surprised to not see anything else in this presentation, like a tile competitor, or when do you expect they'll have another event soon for tablets and such?
How do we enjoy?
All I can say is
okay, so
we weren't surprised. Let's just say we were not surprised.
Weren't surprised. I will say though, I was really expecting that thing in that box to be something, but it turns out
you were obsessed
as usual.
With that box.
As usual,
yes.
I just read the whole thing incorrectly. So
I was right again. Let's just be honest.
You usually are. Like it's okay. I get it.
Yeah. Reference the Cheshire smile of people who work in professional tech reviews. V, do you have the bands, the 5G bands?
No, I will. If I find them, I'll just shout them out.
Okay.
So we don't have. Going to try to pull them up.
Okay, we don't have 5G bands quite.
But we can. I'm going to do that now, and then we can move on with the others.
Oh yeah.
While we still have
Okay.
V, I'm just trying to make sure we don't
Yeah, I
keep
was
it too
gonna
long.
shout out some other stuff that you guys don't
Mhm.
necessarily need to pay attention to, but like during the Google segment, you know, other people were talking about the same sort of stuff, like just that amount of radar so close to you, like looking at your movement in bed, that could be like all sorts of problematic, all sorts of a
Yes.
problem. Mark Dell says, okay, here's my pitch. If they do notice rapid movement, when it eventually stops, they can pop open a rating on the screen
Oh
with
no.
a little animation.
Do
So
y'all
it's like
remember?
closing your rings with the Apple Watch.
Oh my god. Okay. I mean, I'm thinking obviously in a certain way, but do y'all remember when there was this account on Twitter where this guy put a sensor in his friend's bed and then it would tweet anytime there was activity and it would talk about how long, how intense.
I don't remember that, but
I don't remember this.
that's an invasion of privacy, buddy. Yeah.
That sure was,
Yep.
but apparently, like, he finally came clean to them and told them it was happening, and they forgave him. But that was the whole thing for a while. I forget the name of that Twitter account.
Great.
Lost to the sands of time.
A guy I used to work with at TechCrunch years and years ago pitched a package once where he would use every fitness tracker available, including the Poke Walker that came with Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, to just like measure his vitals during sexual congress. And I don't think it was ever published, but I feel like somewhere he's out there in the Bay Area just sort of thinking about what could be.
Well, I can only imagine that that is the sign of a long-term and trusting relationship, because there's no way that you could just be strapped up with like 5 different things
And not
like,
in a good way.
yeah, well, okay, yes, but strapped up with like 10 or 15 different fitness trackers. I'm exaggerating here. And then like, you know, call the person that you're casually seeing and being like, hey, you know, hey, do you want to come over? And then they look at you and
I gotta close these loops.
what the heck? Yeah, I gotta close these loops. Like, can you help me test this? No, you gotta be like with someone for a while.
For sure.
You understand. Okay.
Listen,
this
you
is
don't
no
know.
comment.
I don't know how Tinder works anymore. Maybe everybody needs to complete their
no,
rings.
absolutely
Okay.
not. Let's not even talk about that.
We all
So-
gotta complete our rings. Yeah.
If we don't have anything about the 5G bands in the A
I
series,
looked in the spec sheet that Samsung gave us, and
Yeah.
they were not very specific for spec sheets.
which is
So-
disappointing in its own way.
But not a
Yes.
surprise.
Not a
Speaking-
surprise.
Not very
but
surprising.
disappointing. So, Josh, we really did try. You got
It's entirely possible, by the way, that because these are global announcements for now, they're not sharing that information. Because I also did a search on Google.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
vary country to country, wouldn't it?
That's a good point. We do know for a fact that the A52 5G in Korea, for example, is, I believe, the only model of the bunch that has MST, or like magnetic stripe payments.
Oh,
So if you live in
Interesting,
Korea,
yeah.
you just get like a slightly better version of the phone. So very
That's cool.
regional differences.
That's fun. One thing we don't really talk about when it comes to sleep tech, by the way, somebody needs to do like a good sleep apnea machine. I feel like that would actually
Yeah.
help a lot of people, because the devices right now are really big and clunky and require a lot of work. Like
There
we need
are
a Google
enough-
or somebody. Yeah.
And there are enough people who have it that like it's a good market.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of the more general kind of meatier questions, we got a
Mhm.
question from a user called Fat Produce
Mm.
that says, I would like to talk about alternatives to Samsung and Apple now that LG looks like they are leaving the smartphone market and HTC is long dead. So where are the alternatives?
Good
Pixel.
question.
Sorry.
Good question. Pixel.
So,
Yeah,
but-
Pixel.
Okay, but so is your choice between A, B, and C, Samsung, Apple, Pixel, like Google Pixel? Is that it?
You have occasional Sonys, right? Yeah.
Sony's in there. I think Motorola is doing some solid stuff in the mid-range space. It really, I think, depends on how much you're willing to spend. If your flagship stuff is, I mean, that's been dominated by Samsung and Apple for a very long time. That's not going to change. But if you're only looking to spend, in the neighborhood of $600 and below, you do have a lot of options depending on where you are. I mean, if you're sort of in markets where Poco is a thing, like I love those guys. The Xiaomi team does a really good job with the Poco phones. Motorola is like all over the place, and they're generally a pretty safe bet, though they do have their quirks. There's a lot of regional brands too are just like really worth looking into. The difficult thing for us is that, comparatively speaking, the US smartphone market is really boring compared to everybody else, but it is also like a lot for one or two people to like cover. So we don't always get to spend as much time sort of looking into international and sort of lower cost options as we might like, which kind of sucks, to be fair.
But I
There's
don't
also
honestly have a
Nokia.
problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there was also Nokia, Oppo, a bunch of other phones. Like V said, depending
Oppo,
on the
yeah.
region, you have
Yeah.
so many more options. Yes.
Yeah. I also don't have a problem with the market kind of stabilizing with a couple companies, because this is kind of what happens, and they're the biggest ones and the leaders because their devices last longer and generally are higher quality. Like, that's the thing. Anytime you go to a no-name brand is a risk, or it's a risk that your phone will die within a year or a couple of years. And if you buy Samsung or Pixel or an Apple phone, you know, that's usually a better investment. So
Yeah,
you could you could experiment. Sure.
We have frequent chat visitor Charbacks. I've seen Charbacks before. They say
Charbacks.
that Huawei is so far ahead, and yeah, we just don't have them in the US because of mostly security concerns.
Because of reasons. Also, Huawei.
Many
reasons.
So it's interesting that we were talking about just the lack of other options, because there was actually it was Fat Produce who was talking about how they are looking forward to is it a new Xperia release? Xperia 1?
Xperia?
Oh,
Xperia, excuse me.
Oh, Xperias were good. Yeah.
I mean, they're still good. Like the Xperia 1 Mark II was an insane phone that no one really should buy. But goddamn, I've never enjoyed using a smartphone camera more, and that's purely because it doesn't do any of like the hand holding with AI that you get out of like a Pixel. Like I spent a couple nights testing like whatever Pixel was new at the time versus that thing, because philosophically they're just so different. And I felt more proud of the photos, the good looking photos I took with the Sony, because I just did it all myself. Like their Sony devices very on the high end specifically kind of like appeal to people with more artistic temperaments. But you know, the Xperia 5 Mark II, which was, I believe, like a lower end version of that phone, was not a super expensive thing. And there was a lot to like about. So yeah, Charback's good point. Sony's still out there and they're still doing good work.
They just seem to be a lot more niche, I think, and very specialized towards like vlogging.
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 Yeah.
So just in relation to that, Daniel Cockane is in the chat and just said Sony ain't been good since the Sony Ericsson K800i.
Wait, hold that thought. I'll be right back.
I think that
he's got a Sony Ericsson something.
He's going into the boxes. Before we started today, I noted that V has like the most official like streamer.
Right, so I would say
guy stat.
I would say Sony has not been great since my boy, the Sony Ericsson P910i. Running that sweet Java, the flip out keyboard that is impossible to use in the little baby stylus. Yeah. This would have been like 2004, 2005. Yeah.
I love that era of Sony Ericsson.
Everything was so weird back then.
So good. It was so beautiful. Yeah.
Nokia has not been good since
the Nokia 7610, my first favorite phone of all time. Look at these curves.
E7, the Nokia E7 I got over here. It's not fucking.
Oh wait, do you have it?
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It's the internet.
There's no sensors here. I wish I had my Helio Ocean within reach. I just grabbed that.
Oh, the Helios, man!
I've seen a couple.
There we go.
I've seen a few different phone collectors.
What a beaut!
On TikTok. Like people who have like all of these like phones throughout mobile history, and maybe it would be a good idea to see if we could book one of those people, because I think that would.
Or we could also just dive into our own
we're just gonna get Michael Fisher on
we have it all.
to talk. Michael Fisher on to talk about when phones were fun and into.
Oh yeah, can we just hang out with Captain Two Phones?
We're going to do that.
Captain
that's
Two
a whole
Phones.
plan. Captain Two Phones.
Okay, so Mark Dale says, can we just do a live stream where Chris goes through his drawers?
I mean, let us all go through our drawers. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to say the drawers behind you, not draws. That's a different thing.
Or dresser drawers.
Okay. Well, sure.
Yeah.
But, let's move on to the one other general question that we have, which is Jonathan Anderson asked, and I have a feeling that I know the answer, but let's still ask. Wondering if we can talk about Starlink. I believe this is the CubeSat internet, and
I'm sorry.
as I understand it, like Engadget hasn't quite gotten to that, because I think we've gotten questions about this before.
We've covered Starlink. We just haven't
We've
talked
covered
about it on
it,
the
just
show.
not
Well,
like,
yeah,
the hands-on.
but like,
Yeah.
tried it, thoughts on it, the full review sort of thing.
I'd say none of our car people are here, but go ahead. Anyone want to talk about Starlink?
I mean, so look, I think it's a phenomenal idea. I don't think any of us on the podcast right now are like super equipped to try it out. Like, I don't have access to my building's roof, and I doubt
I could maybe,
Cherlynn might.
maybe set it
Devindra,
up,
you
but
could.
I'm
But you also like you're
Sure.
kind of fine, right? Like ideally. So we used to have one of our, I guess he was our head of social. I forget exactly what his title was. We used to have a guy who
Engagement.
went, yeah, our engagement editor who like decided, hey, I'm gonna just like live out of a van for 6 months. And as far as I'm aware, he like did it for at least part of that time. I would have loved for him to have something like Starlink, just set it up in the middle of the field, see if you can get actual viable data speeds, because that was always an issue for him. I feel like, at least for the three of us, I don't know what conversations you've had. I have not spoken with these people. They haven't reached out to us three.
Nope.
But I mean, I would
maybe-
love for us to test this.
Yeah, I thought maybe Andrew Tarantola might have had some experience with it or might have covered it, but I haven't. And that's the thing, like at Engadget, we rely on topic experts just so that they own their beats. Like V is our phone guy, and we can come to V for everything phone related, and he'll know everything. So none of us here really have been really that deep into Starlink. I have a passing knowledge of it, barely. So
I mean, it's a cool idea because satellite internet has sucked for a very long time.
For so
like
long.
that's the big thing. So
Well, and
Yeah.
So we've got Fat Produce in the chat that just said Starlink could be a game changer here in the rural Ozark Mountains.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so
Exactly.
glad you said that.
yes,
Like
it's
we
so
don't
important.
we don't
And
spend enough
it-
time talking about the digital divide, and we really should.
Absolutely. I was just about
Oh, it's
to
in our
say
plans.
digital divide, because if there's anything the pandemic has shown us, it's that there is a significant, like really serious divide between what people's home internet is like. I work with some people who are even in the Hudson Valley in New York. So, maybe just 50 miles away from New York City, 75 miles away from New York City. And their internet is significantly bad. And so, how can kids do school? How can anyone work from actual home versus maybe the few hubs in the business districts that there are in, wherever their local area in perhaps the Ozarks are? Starlink like faster adoption of maybe satellite-based internet can't come fast enough.
it's cool, but we should also talk about the downside of Starlink, because one thing they've been doing is throwing a lot of satellites up in the air and creating a lot of like pollution, basically like space pollution for people, for astronomers and people. Like it is a big problem.
Yeah. All of a sudden, we talk about scratches on our phone camera lenses. Now we have like scratches on our like optical telescope lenses, because there's just so many CubeSats and little bits of junk running around the outside of or like our front door of outer space. Anyway, I think that is just about it for the comments that we had. V, I think this is our
You're
time.
out.
It's a wrap
say
for me.
goodbye to you.
All
We
right.
should record the outro for V.
Do you want to do that?
For V's leaving, yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're listening to the awesome song in the background now, though.
Awesome
Let's just do a dance party for 2
This should
seconds.
be, just save this for V's like theme whenever he comes
Oh yeah,
on.
he has to walk out.
Dance out, dude.
No.
Awesome.
That's his
Walk out
walkout
Flatbush
song,
with
as
this in
if he
your
was
pocket.
as if he was a pitcher in Major League Baseball or something.
Can I record a cover of that, like an ASMR cover?
Please.
No,
Ew.
stop, no.
Yes,
Ew.
please do.
Anyway,
I'm not gonna do it. Okay.
well, I'm gonna just send V off for the audio now. Okay, get ready. All right. Well, V, thank you so much for joining us for the conversation today. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Velazco, or you can just email me because I really like email. I'm v@engadget.com.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome beans.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
thanks, V.
I will cut my recording.
Yes, cut
Thank
your
you.
recording, send
And
it
send
to
to
me
Ben.
when you can,
All right.
and let's move on to.
All right.
let's-
Bye, guys.
Yep. Give it
Later.
a second.
Bye,
Let's move on
V.
to Other news.
Other news.
We've got so much other
Um,
news.
Dev, did you want to take it because the first one's yours, or?
Sure. I'll jump into the section and do PC hardware corner. How about that?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, now that we've kicked V out of here, let's talk this about. Actually, I like that. Okay, now that we've kicked V out of here, let's talk about some real hardware, grown-up hardware, real muscle power in desktop PCs. Welcome to the PC hardware corner. This week, Intel announced its new 11th generation desktop CPUs. And these are the powerful ones. These are the ones that are going to be going into gaming desktops and things like that. And they're fine. They're interesting. Like, I feel like there's not much more that we really need to say about Intel stuff these days. But the interesting is that the new top-end chip, the Core i9-11909, the 11900K, is an 8-core chip that can reach up to 5.3 gigahertz. Last year's chip was actually 10 cores. So in a way, yeah, Intel is kind of moving backwards, but instead of packing in cores, it's ramping up clock speed. It's doing other things to speed up these chips. It's saying, these chips are, I believe the figure was like up to 19% faster than last year's models in certain respects. So there are speed improvements. And I think the key here is that, raw clock speed, and performance within a single core or a couple cores is more important to games and gamers than having a ton of stuff out there, because most games do not take advantage of multi-core very well. So these chips look interesting, but I do think like the war now is between this and AMD's new Ryzen, 5000 chips, and that war is continuing. But I also think, we're starting to see the aging of Intel's architecture here. Intel, these are 14 nanometer chips. This is like a really aging process, whereas AMD is already at 7 and looking at like what they could do with 5 nanometers in a couple of years, so Intel's just really lagging behind. But yeah, they've got new stuff at least.
I mean, one thing them. You also continue.
Yeah, I'll say and yeah, it's good that Intel is, showing off their new stuff. They also rolled out a new ad campaign for their laptops starring Justin Long, the I'm a Mac guy from the Apple commercials from 15 years ago. They're called Justin Gets Real, and it's basically him showing off different features that PCs have now, like 2-in-1 flexibility and gaming support and touchscreens, and just comparing them to Macs. And I see some people online and on Twitter who are really into these ads, because I think it's true. PCs genuinely have something over Macs these days, but the way they're going about this, getting Justin Long back, basically recreating Apple's old ad campaign, seems so desperate and kind of sad. Like, it just seems like Intel has been in defense mode ever since the M1 chip was announced. And as soon as we started seeing, results from that, those chips are insanely fast. The M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro are some of the fastest machines I've ever tested. And Intel, rather than saying, okay, we got to, buckle up and make our stuff a lot better, Intel's like, no, look at what Apple's can't do. Look at what Macs can't do. And it just feels kind of sad to me. I feel like there's a better way to market this that is more confident on Intel's part and on PC's part, rather than always aligning yourself against Apple. There's no cool factor, right? There's no cool factor like Apple had with its ads. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Cherlynn.
I mean, I guess their so-called cool factor is, like you said, almost retaliatory. Like, here, we've got Justin Long now. He's a PC now. And he's all about these PCs and Intel chips. It feels very in line with my understanding of Intel so far, where they feel, I don't know if they feel attacked or they get a bit defensive every now and then, but they do interesting things. I'd much rather they focus on that. Like I forget what the architecture name is, where they stack the components on top of each other.
They're 3D stacking tech.
Right.
That stuff is cool. And those chips,
really cool.
We're still waiting to see more of that stuff coming. Like, we're waiting on the next generation of chips at the end of this year, I believe. So there's some cool stuff happening. It's just Intel is just facing it from all sides. Like, AMD is coming at it with killer laptop chips, killer desktop chips. Apple came out of nowhere with this chip that is faster than any x86 processor we've seen. So yeah, I could see why Intel's doing this. I just feel like they need more confidence. They need to stop just when Apple was doing these ads, right? They were the underdog. They were saying like, look
Yeah.
at big bad Intel
Right.
and these boring PCs. We have cool new hardware, and they had that real ability to convey coolness. Whereas Intel's like, look over here, guys. Our PCs can do this. We can do that, and we have the Mac guy. There's nothing really there.
Yeah. Right.
One other
Good
thing I
luck.
want
We
to
need-
mention. Yeah, go ahead.
Intel sounds like the whole more confidence in themselves thing. It just sounds like they need a bit of therapy, you know?
Buddy. That's all. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Good
Also,
idea.
this week I reviewed the AMD Radeon RX 6700 XT. This is AMD's new kind of mid-range GPU. It is a $479 graphics card that's kind of meant to compete with NVIDIA's RTX 3070 and the 3060 Ti. But I'm kind of mixed on this thing. I do think it's very fast at times, but the ray tracing performance is not great. The fans are very loud, and we don't know what the final pricing will be, because one thing we've noticed is that the GPU market over the past couple years is kind of a crap show. Like it's hard to get things in stock. It's hard to get things at the correct pricing. I was just looking at prices on Newegg. The RTX 3070, a card that's supposed to be selling for $499, if you can find it at all, it is going for upwards of $700. The RTX 3060 Ti, which is supposed to be $499, is selling for upwards of $600. This market is ridiculous and insane because scalpers come in and get the stuff immediately, and because of COVID-19, the supply chain shortage for chips and other things has also driven prices up. So it's a bad time to be buying a GPU. Hold out, folks, if you can, because I feel like this whole market needs to really step it up. One other thing I'll round out this little hardware corner with is some Alienware laptops. Alienware's new M15 and M17 laptops will have Cherry MX mechanical keyboards as an option.
Yo,
pretty cool.
yes.
That's pretty cool. You'll have your nice clicky keyboards, great for gamers. Gamers really like that for accuracy and for the way like multiple keys just kind of feel under your fingertips. So I wrote this up in Engadget. So yeah, go check that out. That's going to be a $150 upgrade. And they worked for 3.5 years with Cherry MX to design these keys. They basically created a ultra low profile switch design that kind of looks like the DeLorean doors that go up and down like gull wing doors. It sounds cool. I haven't touched it or tested it, so I'm looking forward to seeing these machines. And I hope this sticks around, because other companies like Razer have introduced semi-mechanical switches in laptops and then gave up on it almost immediately. So this seems like an inconsistent thing for this for this category.
And Cherry's like a really recognizable brand in the mechanical keyboard space too. Do we know, and I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask for this product, but do we know what color switches they're using, or?
I forget. I think it's more like the Cherry MX brown switches, but I still I cover PC stuff, and even I have a hard time keeping track of what's what here. But it is a switch that is it is not very noisy, but it's kind of like the best average one.
Yeah, brown is definitely along the lines of like clicky, but like not so clicky. I like the
you don't want to
red
be
sometimes
overdone. And Alienware posted some stuff on Twitter too, of like the idea of what this sounds like.
Ooh.
It could be cool. I don't personally rock mechanical keyboards because they are not really conducive to podcasting. So it is nice to have one around when I'm gaming, but most of the time I'm using the Logitech Natural One that kind of arcs. I don't know if you have further thoughts on what mechanical keyboards could mean for laptops, Cherlynn.
I'd be curious to see the height or the thickness of the laptop, given it has mechanical keys, but we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. And in other news, we're also covering South by Southwest this year. I don't know if do you have any thoughts about what's going on? Because this is a weird show. We're actually all covering Engadget, but there's not much to cover at this point. Yeah.
It's like normally this show is already kind of a struggle to cover, because for me on the team, I'm a bit more of a gadget person. So there's not a lot of gadget news at South by, but there's a lot of good tech demonstrations.
And culture stuff, culture news. Yeah.
And culture stuff and entertainment stuff that would have, where it overlaps with our scope of coverage. So usually it's like when I've gone and checked out a Sony experience or a beauty tech demonstration. This year, all we're doing is, different from you because I'm not helping out with the XR and VR stuff, but I'm just looking at panels and
the panels aren't great.
The panels was not newsworthy is the thing.
Mhm.
They might be like it's forcing us to think about things, which is
Mhm.
good, but not in a way that we can crank out coverage on. Because Engadget is
Sure.
more like about, if we do a piece on what happened in South by, it's more like analyses and trends, and there's just not much that's new that's being
Mhm.
said, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. How about your experience? You did the XR and VR stuff?
Yeah, I've done some. I did this thing called Finding Pandora, which won awards at the Venice Film Festival.
Hmm.
And it was kind of cool. It was like a live theater thing where I joined I believe it's called the VR Chat app. And I basically took a role as one of the Greek chorus and followed along as Zeus and Hera tried to find Pandora's box after Pandora died.
That's
It was
cute.
kind of it's a cute performance. It was fine. It wasn't like groundbreaking or revolutionary or anything, but I will probably be writing something up about this and also other AR and VR stuff I'm seeing at the show, because they basically recreated downtown Austin in VR form in VR chat. So you can go walk around and look
Nice.
at art stuff. So I know you have an Oculus Quest too, Cherlynn. So like you can log on, just go walk around. That's a cool thing, but it is I think South by is one of my favorite shows because it is such a perfect balance of everything I love, like movies and pop culture and music and games and tech. Like it's all of it at once. And a big part of the appeal is just walking around downtown Austin and meeting people and seeing people in person. So I think with a traditional film festival like Sundance, we were able to replicate quite a bit like of actually seeing movies at home. And South by has a lot of that too, but not any major premieres or anything. And for me, the real vibe of South by is just that. It's the vibe of hanging out, maybe seeing celebrities down the street or something as you're walking to a bar or a party. So this
Or,
one
like,
really makes me miss real life. Yeah.
Totally. Like the random appearances too. Like I remember again the one South by that I covered. Yes, the vibe is great. The food is amazing. I wish when you said they recreated downtown Austin, I was like, oh my gosh, do they have the food trucks? Yeah. But one thing I liked about the South by that I covered was that was a South by where Elon Musk just appeared out of nowhere and held a panel out of nowhere. And it's like, all right, cool. Like that's what we're gonna do. But that's not gonna happen. It could totally much more easily happen.
He's gonna spend his time in Clubhouse. Like he will randomly pop up in Clubhouse now and not a South by panel.
And be like, squad, I'm on Clubhouse talking South by Southwest this time. Come on over. And then all the people who are not on Android can't get on. So there you go. or we're not on Apple. I mean, but yeah, it's kind of a wash, unfortunately. But we'll see. But I found it good for networking. So far, I've been finding interesting people, topics, and stuff like that. So it'll help my long-term reporting.
Cool. Well, any other stories you want to hit quickly, Cherlynn? We had a bunch of news this week, and we're just like, I think we spent way too much time on Samsung and their dumb little event. But there is Google stuff still.
Yeah. So just a quick shout out for the YouTube audience that we have a squad counter. That pops up every now and then, counting the number of times we say squad this episode. But anyhow, so Google antitrust, basically there was a suit filed against Google from the Texas Attorney General, I believe, a while ago. And it was in December, I believe, that it brought a suit about Google's anti-competitive conduct and what it believes were monopolistic advertising technology practices. So basically, Google is very powerful in its ad sales or ad networking because that search is everywhere. So Texas's claim was that these are like they're basically pricing people out or forcing advertisers to use their network and kind of killing the smaller ad networks out there. This week, the news is that the suit has been amended to include or target Google Chrome's privacy sandbox, which we I think talked about earlier in earlier episodes of the show, where Google's basically trying to figure out a way to enable ad tracking without third-party cookies. And privacy sandbox is a set of proposals the company is considering to do that. So things like Flock, things like federated learning of cohorts, are part of privacy sandbox. So it's like it's almost an incremental development in this story, which by the way, now 15 state attorneys general have banded together on this suit now, so it's becoming a thing. But it's still worth knowing that like the suit's been amended to target new things, but it's done in a way that doesn't seem to understand the market. I don't.
Gotcha.
It feels to me, so the amendments in the lawsuit accuse Google of, quote, hiding its true intentions behind a pretext of privacy, and that the changes would put, quote, Google's Chrome browser at the center of tracking and targeting, which Google has since refuted and told Engadget that it's let me just pull out the actual wording is here. Attorney General Paxton's latest claims mischaracterize many aspects of our business, including the steps we are taking with the Privacy Sandbox initiative to protect people's privacy as they browse the web. So that's Google's statement. And I just feel like for once, Google's not wrong. I don't think Privacy Sandbox really.
Yeah.
I don't know
This seems like a good example of also legislators not quite understanding the tech and when the tech is trying to change. But this is going to be the last antitrust thing we see from Google or against Google for some time. Like, we're seeing stuff all around the world, and this is good because I do think even if these countries are misunderstanding what Google is doing, it will at least force Google to kind of try to explain itself more. So I want countries to be more involved with this. I just hope they get more informed with how they do it.
Absolutely.
I think we could skip Amazon Care. Let's
do we want to? Yeah, we can skip Amazon Care. All right. So, do you want to take working on, Dev, or do you want me to do it?
Sure. I'll do that. So, moving on to what we're working on, and what am I not working on at this point? This week has been kind of insane. I've just had multiple reviews go up. In addition to the Radeon RX 6700 XT, I also reviewed Dell's 40-inch ultra-wide, ultra-sharp 4D monitor. So go check that out on the site. I'm working on maybe a review of the Asus ROG G15, which is a slightly bigger version of the G14 that we really liked last year. Has some really great hardware in it, including an AMD CPU. So I have it right now. I just like the look and feel of it. So I'm looking forward to reviewing this. Eventually, I'll be writing something about the Justice League Snyder Cut that's debuting on HBO Max. I wish I had time this week to deal with it, but I just don't between South by and everything.
Did you see the tweets already going around about it?
I mean, I saw a lot of tweets.
Aspect ratio. Yeah.
We knew the aspect ratio. We knew that was a problem because that was in the trailers. So it's the whole thing. We'll be talking more about this, but I am personally not looking forward to spending 4 hours watching this movie in a boxy aspect ratio. But report back, folks. Let us know what you think of the Snyder Cut Justice League. We'll be talking about it next week. Cherlynn, what's up with you?
Yeah, people know the OnePlus event is March 23rd. I'll be prepping for that. And I'm still working on some research and interviews that I'm doing. I don't want to give it away just yet because I don't want to be scooped. So just know that I'm doing some research on some interesting things that you'll see on the site, hopefully next week. The Nest Hub that we talked about today, I should be getting one soon to review. So, I'll be sleeping a lot. And one piece of accessibility news that was unveiled sort of overnight, Chrome is getting live captions, which I think is a really cool tool.
Oh, cool.
That's something that, just should benefit a lot of people.
Is that going to work on all videos? Is that what's up?
At least so what happened overnight is we saw a release to the Chrome channel that brings the feature. So we don't have a lot of official details just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this more details about this soon. So I would say stay tuned to the news/engadget.com.
Cool.
There we go.
Let's move on to what we're watching and some pop culture picks for us. And I just want to shout out Raya and the Last Dragon, which is a movie I think you'll really enjoy, Cherlynn. This is Disney's...
I don't want to pay for it.
I mean, you don't want to pay for it. Wait a couple months. But right now, it is a $30 rental on Disney+. And this is Disney's first Southeast Asian set story, or at least a story influenced by all the cultures there. Raya is basically a Southeast Asian princess. And this movie, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It has a lot of influences from Avatar, The Last Airbender, and The Legend of Korra, and a lot of Miyazaki films like Nausicaa and The Valley of the Wind. It is an adventure story. It's an action movie. It's about a girl who is learning to trust other people once again, but it's also like very much a martial arts movie. Like there's some great fights, there's some great action sequences, and I really dug all that. But yeah, I'd actually really be interested to hear your take, Cherlynn. So whenever you get around to seeing it, we should talk about it again. I had a lot of fun with it. I do feel like it's a movie that could also go a little harder in certain respects. It is not like the most original thing from Disney. And something I've talked about with, on the Slash Filmcast, my podcast at slashfilm.com, we talked with Hoi Chen Bui, who is Vietnamese, and she talked about how she felt like this doesn't really represent any specific Southeast Asian culture. It's kind of like a melange of everybody all at once.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a great thing either. But hey, it's something. And I think it's really enjoyable. My daughter Sophia really loved this movie, but she also loves movies about tough girls with swords, apparently. So yeah, she is her father's daughter. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know when I do watch it what I think, because I already have a sense that like the guest that you had on your podcast was probably right. But we'll get to it. It might surprise you and cause you to shake your head to find out that I just watched WALL-E for the first time recently.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I was pretty depressed at the start, but then it got good.
It's a pretty depressing movie. Yeah. At least when it comes to humanity.
Yeah. But that's not my recommendation. This week I watched 2 relatively new movies on Netflix. And the one I'm going to recommend of the 2 is Boss Level. Have you seen it, Devindra?
I saw. That's Hulu. But yeah, Boss Level's fun.
Is it Hulu? Oh, my bad. Yeah. It's on Hulu and Netflix. The 2 movies I saw, were on Netflix and Hulu. But yeah, let's start with the Hulu one. Boss Level. So of the 2 I watched, let's just be frank now. I watched Boss Level and Block Island Sound. And Block Island Sound had the higher Rotten Tomatoes rating, but lower IMDb rating. Boss Level was just more consistently scored across the board, both IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. I actually preferred Boss Level. Boss Level is basically
it's a big dumb action movie. Yeah, come on, it's fun.
Yeah, but Block Island Sound is really more in line with my taste, right? Because it's very science fiction and horror-y and suspensey. But anyway, yeah, Boss Level is fun. It's Frank Grillo stars as this former military guy who gets caught up in a Groundhog Day scenario where he's reliving a day. Yep, a time loop over and over again, and has to figure out how to break out of it. But it's a very gory and fun video gamey take on the genre. Very different from that Christian Miloti. What's the title of that one again?
Palm Springs from last year.
Palm Springs. Very different.
Although it's funny, it's almost a year after Palm Springs, Hulu debuts another time loop movie because
where we're stuck living the same day over and over.
Living the same thing over and over. But this movie is a lot of fun. I saw this too actually a couple weeks ago, and I want to shout it out for anybody who likes gaming stuff or time loop movies or just like fun action. I really like Joe Carnahan as a director. He has done some great action movies. He did the A-Team remake, which nobody really liked, but I thought there's a lot of good stuff in there. And he did The Gray, which also co-stars Frank Grillo and Liam Neeson. And that movie is Liam Neeson versus wolves, and that movie is awesome. So be sure to check out The Gray. And if you want a taste of what Joe Carnahan can do, I suggest look up his BMW film, which is something they were doing in the early 2000s to kind of show off BMW cars, but also pair them up with good directors. He did that, stars Clive Owen as like this mysterious driver of cool BMW cars. And it's a cool chase, little action short film. So that's worth checking out too. Yeah.
Speaking of shows that I watched for the first time only recently, and also action shows, I saw Girl with the Dragon Tattoo for the first time recently too. And
you mean the TV series or the movie?
The movie, the American version of the movie. I was reminded overnight that there is a Swedish version, the one starring Rooney Mara, and it was hard to watch at times, but really, really good.
Yeah.
In terms of the mystery, in terms of the mystery, there's parts of it that are hard to watch, but anyway, these are all things that you can watch if you want to relax from the depressing news of.
I don't know if the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is the one.
I don't know that. Maybe Boss Level. Boss Level's
fun.
Maybe
Boss Level has like a cute, it has like a nice emotional core too, which is also something Joe Carnahan does really well. Action, emotion, feeling. It's good.
So yeah, that's it.
I'll do the outro and then
do you want to shout out the interviews?
Oh yeah. Well, do we want to shout out we can set
Let's
up
just save it for the end. I think
exactly.
because we do
the outro.
Sure, sure.
Right.
sure.
So we do the outro, then we do the setups for the interviews. And
Yep,
I don't
yep,
know if
yep,
you want to
yep.
do that
Okay.
Yep.
on
Okay.
stream or not.
That's it for our show this week, folks. Thank you for joining us. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our very own managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Elman. You can find Cherlynn online at...
If you want to send me cartoon recommendations that I still have yet to watch, probably,
So many,
I'm at
so many.
Cherlynn Low on Twitter.
I am at Devindra on Twitter, and I also do the /filmcast podcast at /film.com. Email us at podcastengadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts, including Spotify. Be sure to stay tuned after the end of this episode because we're going to have some of our interviews coming up. I'll be chatting with Fede Alvarez, the director of Calls, and Cherlynn, you were chatting with Robert Kirkman, right?
Indeed, to talk about his new animated series, Invincible, on Amazon.
Okay, what do you want to queue up first? You want to lead into your Kirkman one or Fede Alvarez?
Whichever order.
Let's do Sherlynn's Kirkman one first.
Okay. And I'll just say that and say goodbye.
Okay.
We'll start with Cherlynn's interview, and that's it for now, folks. Thank you very much.
Okay, and now yours.
And now on to my chat with Fede Alvarez, the director of Calls on Apple TV+.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, chat. So if you want to talk for a few more minutes.
I'm now looking at the chat, and people are throwing out their recommendations themselves. So first of all, Chris Turner, you are awesome. You are awesome. Thank you. Not us. You are awesome.
We got
We're talking about The Expanse. We were talking about The Expanse just last week.
Yep. I finished. I'm all caught up. That show was real good. So good.
Red Cliff. I don't know if I'm thinking of the same movie.
The John Woo movie? Yeah. John Woo,
yeah.
Red Cliff series.
Yeah.
Which was fine. It's not great.
Okay. Do we have any questions that you banked, Ben?
No. You know, mostly like when we were talking about like what is it? The Chrome security sandbox and stuff. Again, like some people like D-Man were like, I try to use Bing and Edge at if at all possible anyway.
Bing is so bad, guys. Bing is not great.
I think that might be a joke, but who knows?
Yeah. Edge is actually pretty good as a browser. I use that as my like work browser for all my work accounts, but Bing, and I've talked to people at Microsoft, and I'm like, guys, why would I search for something on Bing? It never gets me the thing I actually want. And they're like, no, we spend years cultivating our algorithm to make sure it works really well. And I'm over here saying, no, Google gets me what I want immediately. I have to go to like the third page of Bing to even search for an article on Engadget. Like it's all very frustrating.
That's also partly, I think, because sites optimize for Google.
They do, but Bing should know this. Microsoft should know this.
Yeah, that's totally true. I saw a question. I think Josh Sakdeva asked, "Can anyone justify 18 gigs of RAM in the Asus ROG Phone 5?"
No, it's garbage. I saw that story goes up, and I was joking with Richard Lai, our Hong Kong editor, that are they joking? That is a joke headline because phones don't need 18. Computers don't even need 18 gigabytes of RAM. What are you doing?
It's insane. That's
very dumb. I have 32 in this desktop, and I'm happy with that. The most I've ever had.
Well, Chris Turner also says, I wonder if cloud-based high-performance workstations will ever take off. Obviously, the bandwidth to it will be important, but the idea of high performance on the back end from any device seems interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, that is kind of what Google is trying to do with it.
That's what all the game streaming services are trying to do.
It's all cloud gaming, right?
Yeah. Cloud gaming is the big use there. Stuff. Yeah.
The idea that you can access, like, you don't have to have your documents on any computer. You can go to Google Drive. You can open your Google Docs.
That's part of it, but they're asking about power. They're asking about
they're asking about processing, which is totally different.
And that's
Oh,
game
well,
free.
all right. But that also makes sense. Imagine you're trying to render something in
Exactly.
4D or something like that, and your personal workstation might be able to render it in, hours or, the better
Mhm.
part of a day, where cloud-based might be able to. That gets into like. They
No,
would
people do
obviously
that.
price things crazily, though. It's
Yep.
like, okay, I want this Cinema 4D thing to render in 2
The
hours.
hard part is getting those
Better be
huge
ready
files.
to pony up.
Yeah. The hard part is getting those huge files over to like a cloud system, but that is something
Totally.
people do already. People rent out cloud machines to like render stuff.
Yep.
Maybe eventually we'll have more of a workflow for that. And when I was in IT, like the idea was maybe you'd have like this little box that was just like a monitor shell, right? And it would go out to a Citrix server or VMware or something, and like all that work was actually being handled on a box somewhere else in your company or school or whatever. That never really panned out because local processing got so good. You don't actually need to do all that extra work because you could do a lot on device. And then when you need more, maybe we're going to see more of that. I think this decade with cloud streaming and cloud streaming apps in TVs, that is probably going to change the way people game. I hope. Like there's a lot of potential there.
So Daniel Cockane says Bing gives me rewards for searching so that I can use it to buy free stuff. Okay.
Yeah. They're paying you, to use Bing.
Google also pays you if you do the survey app.
Fat Produce says, what non-audio retro tech do you all still use today?
Non-audio retro tech?
Because we love our 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
like
that's
still use
3.5
today.
millimeter headphone jack. I think
Or
it might-
gramophones. A lot of people like those are coming
Gramophone.
back. Not gramophones, but vinyl turntable things.
grandma. I thought
Gramophone.
gramophones, as
No, it's a
in like
gramophone.
non-smart mobile devices.
I mean, the best stuff is, and they mentioned audio too, because microphones and whatnot last forever.
Right, they're
and,
all exactly.
and that tech doesn't
Hi-fi
really change.
systems
Speakers
are
don't
also
really change.
Yeah. I don't
Trying to-
know.
What is
torchlight?
Torchlight. I really
I
like
don't
my
use the phone
garage
flash.
door opener. I really enjoy my garage door opener. Let me just say that. That's the thing.
Yeah, you would
Imagine
think,
if I use a wind-up alarm clock or something. That would be like
Yeah.
pretty retro.
you
Yeah.
would think that there would be a maybe RFID or similar thing for like getting into your garage. So
There
it's
is.
really
There is.
just...
Yeah, there is.
Oh yeah.
It gets
Okay.
very complicated. Well, no, even like garage doors have always worked on this like weird wireless frequency thing, and there are ways to make it smart so that your phone could tell you, did I actually shut the door when I left the house? Because that's something everybody thinks about.
Oh yeah.
So you can make it smart in that way, but I just like the basic. I have a keypad like right outside my house, so when we walk up, and I don't need to bring keys or anything, I just hit a couple buttons and the door opens up, and you can get inside the house. It's very nice.
I wanted to shout out just some names really quick. Chungtin Samuel Chan or Chan, Bryant Mitchell. We have a viewer today who says they're from Afghanistan, Mustafa Najafi, I think. And also hello, obviously, to our regulars, D-Man, Daniel Cocky, and Mark Dell. Charbax is here today. Cornell is here today. We've missed some of our regulars over the last few weeks, too.
Yeah. Come back to us, folks. Squad.
But we're also excited to see these new names in our squad. Yeah, Dev.
Yeah, like Fat Produce is asking a bunch of really good questions. Like, are y'all mice or trackball users?
Nobody's a trackball user.
Dang, come on.
They don't exist.
I have a very specific idea of who is a trackball user. People who are very good at making music are all trackball users.
Sure.
Like every producer that I've ever known, like personally, the person who taught me like music studio production was a trackball mouse user. Like most of the video game composers that I have ever seen are trackball mouse users.
Interesting.
I think that is the mark of the master, using a trackball.
Yeah, it's the tactility and the control you get from it. Whereas now I do feel like, are there like touchscreen or like touch interfaces, right? Or other ways to kind of get some of that control too. I don't know how people do it. Trackballs are good.
I mean, you might be able to use something like a Wacom or something.
Exactly. Like
rig things together like that. But I haven't seen anyone use that. I think that it would be interesting though. I seem to remember. Oh, I'm not going to remember the brand name, but there are there is a big like touchscreen panel that I've seen some people use for music production. I saw it
Exactly.
in like Steve Aoki's studio or something,
Mhm.
and you know,
And now
that guy
everybody's
gets a
using
ton
like
of
the
stuff for
synth
free.
boxes and stuff too. Like I can imagine those. Are they
You talking about like
the things people use for drum machines and for
oh
samples
yeah,
and stuff
okay,
too?
so yeah, like MPCs. I mean,
Yeah,
MPCs, you might even call that retro tech by now, because
pretty much retro tech. But I
those
can
were
imagine putting like a
available in
trackpad on that for
the
some sort
90s
of
and
like
stuff.
trackpad for direct control of certain things on that. But anyway, this is a Terrence conversation. We really need to have
Yeah.
him in here for that.
One name that I saw on our live stream that showed up here on our live chat today too is Aiko Yori. So hello. Thanks for
Hello.
coming to the podcast. Just come back every week. It'll be fun.
And be sure to subscribe, folks. Thank you. Like, I really love that we have this crowd here.
Yeah.
Even if you've already listened to the show, it would be super helpful if you please subscribe. Please.
Yeah.
Please.
To the
Our
audio.
views.
So on Spotify.
Our children need views.
For Sophia.
Yeah.
And yesterday we got a new subscriber, DVDV, I believe, subscribed to the Engadget YouTube channel. So shout out again. Thank you for subscribing.
Cool. And leave a review on iTunes if you can. All this stuff is helpful. It just really convinces everybody to say like, hey, maybe we should keep this around because people like hearing us talk about tech. Yeah.
Okay, so
if we have a bit of a pause, I mean, I think we can't not talk about what's going on in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. I think if you've seen the news recently at all, you'll hear about the shooting and the I don't even have the words really to describe fully what happened, but there were I can't remember what the exact number that's reported is. It's either 6 or 8, either 8 people and 6 of them were Asian women or what it was. But yeah, being killed over in Atlanta, I believe, and then also just a spate of hate crimes against Asian Americans and Asian people in New York and in San Francisco and basically all over this country. So I just wanted to say, hey, if you're not aware, it's happening.
Please be aware.
Happening.
Yeah.
And it's obviously wrong. And I don't say this just because I'm Asian. I would say this killing is not right to begin with, but targeting a person because of what they look like is wrong. And just in case you needed to know this,
well,
here we go.
We could go a step further and be like, one thing I think that would be really useful for people is to learn some like encounter training or something, like ways to
bystander intervention,
like ways to de-escalate things, because I think especially our listeners probably agree with us, but one thing I started noticing, and I had to do this several times in New York for other things, is like, if you can help out, it's one thing to believe and say you want to protect people and you believe in stopping hate, but if you can ever help out, I think it's a very useful thing. This is a very sad state we're in, but I'm hoping we can move forward as a country eventually. We kind of have some lingering hatred coming around. It's not just the last president, though. This is America at its core, and we'll be talking about more of that down the line at some point. But we have a lot to reckon with as a country, I think.
I think so. I think, again, like we said, like Devindra said, if you're watching this stream already, you're probably, on a good start. I think most of our viewers, I like to believe, are good people and are trying to learn to be better. And from the comments that we're seeing in the chat right now, people are asking what's a good way to learn bystander intervention and that sort of. That's a good place to start at the very least.
Do not ask your Asian friends to explain this to you, because that's happened to me several times too. For people saying, "How can I help?" For the love of God, Google and do some research and see what's happening, and don't put that like emotional labor on people who are already stressed about everything happening in the world right now. Yeah.
And I'm sure you have this too, Devindra, but if you want any examples of racism happening against you personally, I have plenty of encounters I can share, just not just as an Asian person, but as an Asian woman, obviously having more than my fair share of, and I'm sure you've seen the recent think pieces about how Asian women have been overly sexualized and fetishized over the years. This has been happening forever. My entire life since my 20s, I've been having to contend with this.
Has it been different like since you left Singapore? Like, I'm sure like that cultural clash is absolutely different, right?
In Singapore, I would not be killed because I was Chinese. I mean, I say that now, and then it's gonna happen at some point. Maybe, I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't want to like
Brittany?
shoot myself in the foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about the future. I don't want to jinx things. But in Singapore, Chinese people are the majority. Obviously, it was a huge shift, a huge adjustment. But it's always been existing online. Everywhere I go online, even in Singapore, when I'm just hanging out online, being an Asian woman on the internet, people are like, "Oh!" I remember like one of my earliest experiences in America was when I was in the dorm at my university in Buffalo, and me and my roommate, she's a Japanese girl. My roommate she still is a Japanese girl. Anyway.
She decided not to be. She was just like, I'm done with this. Yeah.
So we were waiting on an elevator, and the door opened, and the elevator was full of drunk, I almost want to say frat boys, but it was just drunk college boys. And they just went, they were all drunk, and they went, "Oh, Asian girls." And then the doors closed, and they went back up. And we were just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
It's so strange, but it's been happening.
So we were talking about Pandora's box a little bit before. They don't even really realize that like the doors opened, they had maybe 20 seconds to ruin your day.
Yep.
Then the doors closed. They moved on. They weren't even thinking about it. But like, yes, that's something that sticks with you for a while. And especially because it was in your dorm building, like, wow, that feels like a less safe place immediately.
Totally. Hey, I was in college after 9/11. It was not great being a brown guy in America after 9/11. So yeah, actually 9/11 was the first week of my college classes. That kind of defined everything. That was actually when that happened. We were I had a seminar with the president of the college. So it was kind of a really cool class to be in. And he had to sit us down and be like, everything is going to change after this. And within our town, like I went to Amherst College in Western Mass, and it's a cute little town. It's a liberal town, but you do run into pockets where people are just like, surprise racism. Really, I think that's what it is in America. It's surprise racism. Don't forget where you belong. And I think that's kind of a lot of this. Yeah.
And I don't want to say too much more because I could go on forever about the encounters I've had, but like, it's not even just America. I remember one of the worst cases of racism I ever suffered was in Canada. I don't know if I told you the story.
I have not heard the story.
This guy who got offended that I tried to move slightly away from him on the sidewalk because he stood right next to me. And as a woman, I am inclined to protect myself. So I made distance between us. He got offended, and so spent the rest of his walk home and my walk back to my hotel screaming happy endings at me. So that was fun. That was Canada. I'm just saying, this is not isolated to America. This is around the world.
It's not, but we definitely have a special way of demeaning other cultures. Like we've kind of mastered it as a country. Yeah.
America's really
the Chinese Exclusion Act, Japanese internment camps, like we have kind of cultivated it pretty well. But yeah, this is not a happy conversation. It's a global problem.
Definitely.
But in America especially, like what we're talking about right now is American culture reacting to Asians being in America. So this is a sad conversation, but I think it's an important one to have, and I hope you're all thinking about like what is happening and why it's happening and what you could do to help. That would be great.
So I think the paths forward are be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other.
Your Asian friends to explain this to you, but be a little extra nice to them. If they seem like they're feeling down,
I think maybe even more so than that.
Some ice cream on like Instacart or something. I think that would be fun.
I think more than that is like we got to nip this stuff like at the bud a lot of times, and everyone is afraid. If you hear your grandparents, if you hear your uncles or your aunts or even your parents saying shitty things, like it is on your behalf. Like you should feel empowered to stop that or say something, because that is kind of how this stuff perpetuates, right? It's the normalization of this behavior, and at some point people just got to step up and be like, no more.
We're here to talk. I'm here to talk if you want to hear more on Twitter, obviously, but we're out of time. I think it's been a long day already. So
it's been a very long week. And
it has been a long week. So let's take us out. Thank you to our video team. It's led by Kyle Mock with Owen Davidoff, Julio Barrientos, and Luke Brooks. But it's powered by everyone in the chat. I'm especially happy that people in the chat are empathizing with us because we couldn't let this stream end without addressing this, really horrific situation. If you stuck around, rate the show. We just talked about it. We live in a world of algorithms, and we'll see you next week.
Next week, folks.
Thank
Later.
you, everyone.